Hello and welcome to the Last Mile podcast, where we talk about the people that work and operate off the grid and how we can keep them connected. My name is Ryan Traden. I'm a contributor to the Last Mile online publication, as well as the host of the Last Mile podcast. Thanks for joining me today. When we look back on 2020, 5 or 10 years from now, we'll definitely remember the COVID-19 pandemic. It's been the all-encompassing story of the year, with the exception of maybe the 2020 U.S. presidential election. But we certainly shouldn't forget about other tragedies that occurred this year, the most devastating of which were the wildfires that we saw in other countries like Australia and right here at home in America's Pacific Northwest. Our guest today was once one of the wildfire specialists that would put himself directly in danger to help protect the lives and property of others. Now he helps outfit wildland firefighters with the tools and equipment they need to keep themselves safe in the field. His name is Lucas Mayfield, and he is the Fire Program Manager at Mystery Ranch. Lucas, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the opportunity.
So this is going to be really interesting. So you started working on a HotShot crew in 2007. Now, for our listeners who may not be familiar with firefighting, can you explain what a HotShot crew is and what they do?
A HotShot crew, there's roughly 110 HotShot crews in the country. Officially, they're titled Interagency Hotshot Crews. They're a shared Type 1 national resource that can travel anywhere in the country when assembled and respond to any all-hazard incidents, not just fires. Fire response and fire suppression is certainly their specialty. They're typically comprised of 18 to 22 people that meet and exceed the standards set in the Interagency Hotshot Operating Guide that all hotshot crews have to abide by in order to maintain that Type 1 status. And vaguely, hotshots solve problems and provide on-the-ground solutions in order to meet incident management objectives. And if you don't, oftentimes if the capacity doesn't exist, hotshot crews are sought after. If the capacity or the answers aren't easy to come by, then it's, I think, the best resource available to be that problem solver for you.
Hotshots solve problems. I think you found a new motto for them. One thing that was really interesting, you said that it's not just fires. That's something I didn't know. What other kind of situations do you guys respond to?
Absolutely anything. I mean, they assisted with Hurricane Katrina recovery efforts, shuttle recovery, you name it. They can go and be anywhere and assist in any capacity needed. So
let's transition. Let's talk about gear a little bit. So obviously you're not on a hotshot crew anymore, but when you were, what kind of gear and equipment did you guys carry? What kind of communications tools and technologies did you guys rely on to stay connected and safe?
First and foremost, it's the head on your shoulders to make intelligent decisions. When you're stressed and tired and physically exhausted at times, and then head to toe PPE is probably fairly common, from a hard hat to ear protection, Nomex clothing, boots. And then for outside of that, you have hand tools and chainsaws. So usually 3 saw teams per crew is standard, and then hand tools in the back with overhead filling, a lot of those decision-making positions. And then medical equipment, so 10-man kits, trauma kits, extraction devices. And then for commo, it's pretty standard, at least federally, to see Bendix King radios, so KNG and DPH two-way radios. And then GPSs used to be extremely common, and those are slowly not utilized as much and are being replaced with cell phones, primarily for the online mapping platforms that exist on cell phones now.
So you mentioned quite a few pieces of comms gear there, and maybe not so much the head on the shoulders, which was the first piece of equipment you mentioned, but that other comm gear. Did that ever fail you guys? Was there ever a situation where it didn't work or didn't work as anticipated or didn't work as needed? And if there were, how do you guys manage a challenge like that in the moment?
Troubleshooting. I mean, the biggest issue with so you have mobile radios in your vehicles that are typically Bendix King as well. Those transmit and receive at a they do a much better job. Obviously, larger platform, more power, bigger antenna. The biggest issue with the two-way radios is that they're primarily line of sight. So, and we're the ones that are programming them and setting up, where those are located as far as the channel designations, how you go about it. So it's usually operator error or that you've lost line of sight. So you could set up human repeaters, use a repeater network, have repeaters set up in order to maintain that line of sight and a high point at least to be able to utilize people as repeaters or get the repeater set up to where you have comms. And that's probably the biggest issue. And then, fat finger and radio frequencies in. So just being able to double check based off of the comms plan that you have and then going in and making sure that whatever the frequencies are right or the code guards are right, et cetera.
Obviously, probably bad time for communications challenges because at least to me, it seems like wildfires and bushfires are getting worse. I don't know if this is one of those situations where we just see more news about it because of the internet and the amount of news that we all digest every day. But it seems like wildfires and wildland fires are getting more frequent, more intense, and they're getting bigger. In that environment, what's the biggest challenge that faces firefighters today?
The size and scope of the fires that individuals are responding to is certainly the largest challenge. And I think that it shines a pretty bright light, especially this past fire season, 2020, with its overall magnitude and then combined with COVID. You're looking at a workforce that is in large part undermanned and increasingly burned out because a fire season it's not a fire season, it's a fire year at this point. If you look at the conditions in California, I mean, I think that there's multiple thousands of acres burning in Northern California and Nevada right now with homes being lost. So biggest challenge is just overall size and scope. The fact that it's not a fire season, it's a fire year. And then that workforce is undermanned, burned out. And then there is, to a certain extent, a lack of recognition federally that these folks are specialized professionals.
Well, it's interesting to hear you confirm that the size and scope is bigger. Like I said, I wasn't sure if that's perception or if that is reality. And it sounds like that's reality, that these are bigger, scarier, larger, fires that we're battling. And, obviously the top priority in that situation is to keep people safe. And, one of the most important tools, at least I feel, to keeping people safe is making sure that we can communicate with them. We know where they are, that if they need help, they can get help. So let's talk a little bit about communications and communications technologies, if that's okay. So, are there any new communications technologies trends that you are particularly excited about as far as, helping to keep wildland firefighters safe and connected? I know here in the U.S., there's some buzz about FirstNet. I know you had mentioned it before that cell phones are playing a bigger role. So there's some talk about 5G and cell phones playing a bigger role with firefighters. And we're also hearing some things about mobile mesh networks like goTenna, goTenna Pro. So, what should agencies be taking a serious look at, in your opinion?
Well, I'll say, my background is in large part on the federal side of things. And I think that the municipal and county departments, in particular in California, are jumping on board with some of the communications technology that's out there and available for folks. I would say, and the first time someone mentioned it to me was a former coworker and mentor, friend, peer, but he was talking about goTenna back in 2017, and I'm the most excited about the potential that something like goTenna or goTenna Pro and that mesh network and the capability that it would allow individual modules or teams as a whole to actually, track for safety reasons and then just for operational reasons. You look at how far you spread people out for certain tactical assignments, and to actually be able to see if they're in the right place, making the right progress, and hitting those pre-identified checkpoints is pretty awesome. On the federal side, it's done on paper with maps, and then more and more folks are getting accustomed to stuff like Avenza and Gaia, and they're doing that. But to be able to do it in real time and have live tracking would be a game changer, in my opinion, for on the ground operations, situational awareness, and then increase the ability to make sure that they often refer to LCES, which is lookouts, communications, escape routes, and safety zones, are the 4 things you always have to have in place. And just to be able to truly beef that up, I guess, is pretty cool.
That is a cool capability. I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing now. We talked about your past with the HotShot crew. Let's talk about now the current and the future, your role with Mystery Ranch. Tell our listeners a little bit about the company and its gear and its accessories, and let's talk a little bit about how long the company's been serving firefighters and first responders.
From what I know, when Mystery Ranch came to life or back to life, they started in 2000 or 2001 dealing directly with military folks, is my understanding. In 2005 is when Mystery Ranch was approached to build a better piece of line gear being the backpack in the U.S. all firefighters hit the line with, as your fire shelter, whatever you're going to need for the day. Chainsaw kits, fuels. But a HotShot crew in Southern California approached them in 2005. They prototyped packs in 2005, and then again in 2006, and then in 2007 was the first real entry into commercial packs for specifically designed for hand crews and HotShot crews that kind of led that charge. So since 2007, we've been to market. I started wearing one in 2009 at the crew I was on. We tested them in 2008, and then I've been wearing one ever since 2009, and still go out occasionally on fire assignments when available.
Let's talk a little bit about your role with the company. I would assume having someone like you, someone who's actually used the pack in the field, is probably really insightful. I'm sure you can help the company with product development a little bit, tell them how it performed, changes that you'd suggest making in it to make it more useful and valuable. So, I mean, is that part of the role that you play? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing with the company and how your previous experience is helping the company today.
Yeah, so I'm the fire program manager at Mystery Ranch, and I would say that my experience assists in quicker buy-in with the customer base, because I took the job because I don't necessarily have to sell it. I know it's the best in the world, and I believe in it, and I think that it was another way for me to assist the people that serve in those positions that are family to me. So quicker buy-in with the customer base, and then a basic knowledge of what gaps we can continue to fill and how that's going to positively or negatively affect the boots on the ground that put this gear on. And I think that's one thing that I always try to keep in mind whether I was still working for the feds. But our packs might be some of the last piece of equipment that people put on because bad things happen, and there are fire fatalities on a yearly basis. And then I think that my experience has also assisted in just building a network of folks that I can speak with or that can speak to me and get the ball rolling on ideas that I wouldn't have thought of. Because as I get further removed from operational positions, I'm going to need that network to continue to push, to design, develop, and go to market with the equipment that is the best in the world.
What makes these Mystery Ranch packs like that one must-have item for wildland firefighters? What makes it the best thing in the world?
I would say that it's in total contradiction to what fire packs historically were, which were just more webbing or line gear. There was not a lot of, I guess, form or function in considering fit and the actual weight that's being carried on the line. So what Dana has created with the Futura yoke system and the fire yoke for our bags, it's a little narrower to allow for more breathability, but a pack that's fit to an individual.
What are you most excited about as far as Mystery Ranch's upcoming product developments? Is there anything that you can share with us? Anything new that might be coming out that you're really excited about?
I'm pretty excited. 2021 will be the first, line of products that started in my head, and the designers and the product team at Mystery Ranch has made a reality. There's two accessories that I'm pretty stoked about. One that's going to assist for firing operations, regardless of agency, and then another accessory of sorts that'll assist with carrying weird loads, in particular cubies, 5-gallon water containers, and 5-gallon fuel containers.
Well, considering all of your past experience, I'm sure that since these came from your brain, from your head, they're going to be particularly useful and applicable for folks who are out there doing the hard work of protecting us from wildfires. You've been listening to the Last Mile podcast, and we've been speaking with Lucas Mayfield, the fire program manager at Mystery Ranch. Lucas, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and our listeners today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'd like to thank you, our listeners, as well for tuning in. If you liked what you heard here today, I'd encourage you to check out the Last Mile online publication at connectthelastmile.com for even more content like this.